I'm honored. Wow. Let's see. Where to begin? Well, as some of you may recall, those that I guess were here the last time, I think that was back in June, we discussed a lot of things. And one of those things in particular, the last time, again, was dealing with language, the many forms of language, or the loom of language, and the quote-unquote molecular biographical sciences of language, for which we covered dealing with those languages, specifically decoding a lot of information, because, as you know, a lot of what you see and read is encrypted and encoded. And I'm not going to spend too much time on that today because, of course, that was the last time. However, just to, I guess, kind of bring people up to speed, and in dealing with the science of decoding information, we covered a science known as lexigramming, which, of course, then evolved into helixogramming, which is the upward spiral of, how can I say, tapping into areas of anagrammatical writing, etymology, the root of words, okay, which this is what helixogramming is. Now, some of you may have dealt with, etymology by itself, or you may have dealt with anagrammatical writing by itself. You may have dealt with phonetics by itself. However, helixogramming is a combination of all of the above. As I said, symbiology as well, geometry, runeology, because we covered the runes, for those of you who remember the last time, which is actually a form of, or originally stemmed from the hieroglyphs, all right? And we also covered areas, of course, of cryptography, which, of course, deals with decoding. Now, yes, to take it to the next level, we're going to be dealing with, of course, again, words, but we're going to be dealing with the physics of words, or we'll say the quantum physics of words. So that takes us into the area of magic, or at least what some people call magic. For starters, when we talk about magic, we talk about individuals like, for example, Merlin, who, was famous during the so-called time of King Arthur, okay? But before I deal with that exactly, I'm just going to, one thing you must know about me, and for those who have been here before, I jump all over the place. There is really no sequence until, I guess, the middle or the end of the lecture in terms of the connections. So, at that point, you'll begin to see all of the connections, what goes where and what goes, in each place or category. So anyway, to start, we're looking at words, which words are comprised of what they call characters, right? Okay? And characters can be many things. For example, let's just say I'm a director, and, I'm directing a play. Now, while I'm directing that play, I have to have a group of people who are called what? Exactly. Which is, well, actually, individually they're called characters, but collectively they're called what? A cast. Exactly. Which takes you into the area of a monopoly system that was going back to ancient Kemet and even other civilizations, where there were a group of individuals who kept information to themselves, which were considered to be a priestly caste system, if you will, okay? And dealing with that, you're looking at, for example, the caste system that dealt with languages. So there were certain languages and certain things that were undisclosed to the general public or the layman. Now, that we're dealing with characters, again, characters consist of, I guess you could say, to form words, what do you use? Yeah, which are called what? Okay. They're called alphabets, but they're called letters, right? Which letters form what? Okay, what else do they form? Very good, words, exactly. And hence, in order to form words, what do? Somebody said it. What's that? You put them together, but what do? You say them, but what else do you do? What's the first thing they do when you go to school? You learn how to do what? Okay, but then when you learn your alphabet and you start to put together words, you have to do what to put the words together? Yeah, which eventually, yes, phonics too, but eventually, yes, you learn syllable writing, which of course, you know, the language we deal with or the dialect we deal with is a form of syllable writing. Very good. And you learn how to spell, right? Very good. Now that you learn how to spell and that we talked about briefly, or I mentioned briefly, I said King Arthur and I said Merlin. Now, what did Merlin do? He was a magician that did what? He cast spells, right? Very good. And in order to cast his spells, what did he use? He used a wand, right? So, again, this goes back into the science of phonetics, lexigramming, and anagrammatical writing of sorts, which word is also wand, right? Because, again, the consonants are interchangeable, and the vowels, okay? The vowels and the consonants are interchangeable, but again, as we said before, you have to know when they're interchangeable or when it applies. So, now that we understand that the word is, in fact, the wand, and it is how you use the wand, or the word in this case, that is most instrumental in bringing about whatever spell it is you are trying to what? Cast. Very good. Okay. Now that we understand that, that takes us into, as we said, magic, or form of magic, or what some believe to be magic, which what is associated with magic in today's day and age, and even throughout the last millennium? The millennial group, or the millennium group, right? But, which is the occult, what they call the occult sciences, right? And in dealing with the occult sciences, and magic, as it were, and words, you're also dealing with the sacred wheel. All right? The sacred wheel is also known as the tarot, as in the tarot cards. Why is that? Because I know I've written all over the board like I've already given the lecture, but anyway, the sacred wheel is the rota, okay? Which actually is T-A-R-O, right? Which is tarot, right? But you don't need really the T because the T is basically silent, right? which is also, as you know, ROTA, right? Which, interestingly enough, which way does it go? You said it goes counterclockwise? No, it's clockwise. I mean, we know the whole thing about time and how it's been mixed up and, you know, well, it's backwards. So, that it goes clockwise in the direction of the spiral, all right, even though we know that in our time, or at least what they call time, it goes in the right-handed coil, or corkscrew coil. And what we're dealing with and what we're learning how to do through all of these particular things is actually reversing it, okay? And in reversing it, one has to begin to understand the essential particles in which it is made up of, okay? Which eventually takes you into physics, quantum physics, particle physics, elementary particles, and so forth, okay? Which you've heard for a number of years from the time of Einstein, even before, and thereafter, you know, individuals are talking about this stuff like it's, you know, too difficult to understand, you know, for the average person. When, you know, it's really not all that. It's very, very simple, okay? But anyway, before I go any further, getting back to the tarot, or the rotor, as it were, which, of course, is a sacred wheel, which, of course, goes back to, as I said, magic, Merlin, the wand. There are sacred words that are also used within that wheel, right? The sacred words are, well, one of many. But the one in particular that I'm concerned with right now is this one, what they call the tetragrammaton, okay? Which, of course, tetra, dealing with what? Four sides, as in the case of your four letters, as in the case of the cross, so-called cross, okay? Which, of course, if you turn it sideways, you have the X, which, of course, is represents the sacred wheel. And within the center of that wheel, you have the id, or yad, sound, okay, which basically represents the dot, or the principle that does not move. It doesn't really go anywhere. It stays right there, okay? But like I said, we're dealing with the four sides, dealing with the four sides. We're also dealing with a pyramid of sorts, right? Now, within this pyramid, or cross, or X, whichever angle you're standing at, or looking at it, you have something that happens in between, right? This takes us into the areas of science of the pyramids and so forth and so on. I know I'm sounding like very blasé about a lot of this, but you have to forgive me. Okay, so we said that this is directly connected to the tetragrammaton, okay, for which each one of the letters represent, of course, angles within shapes, okay, which of course deals with geometry, or a form or a type of geometry. And they are also referred to as fire letters, okay, or like what they call fire letter geometries. And each one of the fire letter geometries, okay, help to shape creation between the octaves of sound and the powers of light, okay? Because in order to understand what this is and how it works and what happens in between, you have to begin to understand light, okay? I hear a lot of people talk about sound and vibrations and this, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah. But it's important to comprehend or understand what light is and how it works, okay? And in order to really begin to understand how it works, you have to then get into an area that most generally do not cover or do not touch. For whatever reasons, I don't know. Okay? But the important thing is that we will be delving into that today or right now. Okay? Now, within each one of these sides, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, which are also quadrants, or quadrants, right? Quad 4. Remember algebra? Okay? For which each one represents something that takes place or occurs or happens within the universe, okay? Which deals with interaction. You have fundamental interactions that happen or that occur, okay? 4 fundamental interactions, okay? You have electromagnetic interaction, gravitational interaction, weak and strong interaction, all right? For which what they call the geocubic matrix is responsible for those interactions, which I'll get into the geocubic matrix a little later. However, the 4 interactions, like I said, gravitational interaction, basically is an attractive one, okay? And the attractive interaction is one that on an atomic level, it is negligibly weak or very weak. But on a cosmological scale, as we know, it is very, very strong for the simple reason that it holds the components of the universe together, right? Very good. So that takes us into from gravitational to electromagnetic interaction, okay, which basically is responsible for, if you will, the forces between atomic structure. It is also responsible for chemical interaction, as well as all electromagnetic phenomena. Okay? And what else can we say about electromagnetic interaction? It has some similarities to gravitational interaction, okay, in that it is attractive, much like gravitational interaction, but it is also repulsive. It can do one of 2 things. Why is that? Because within charged particles, all right, you have electromagnetic interaction, or electricity, right, that happens between molecules, cells, atoms, etc. Okay? Now, before I go any further, are you with me? Okay. Good. Now, I know you're probably saying, you know, this is like a little abstract, but you will again see where it fits and how it applies to the everyday. Okay? So now we have gravitational and we have electromagnetic. Now also within the electromagnetic interaction, some neutral particles, what they call neutral particles, which basically don't really have any charge per se, some neutral particles also decay by electromagnetic interaction. Okay? As well, we can also see or recognize that it is a classified field of force, okay, that is described by what they call virtual photons actually, okay? And because in electromagnetic fields, the so-called quantum would be the photon, okay? In the, how can I say, in the gravitational field, the quantum would also be the graviton, okay? So in other words, quantum, not getting away from the interactions because it's all interrelated, but the quantum actually is not what most people say it is. Like when you think of quantum as in quantum leap, you know, it's like this guy took a leap from here across the street, you know, in like one leap. Actually, quantum happens in what they call excitation. It happens like that, okay? And it tends to happen within unit cubes, what they call unit cubes, all right? And the unit cubes are actually the cubes that hold spheres, okay? Which actually, this is how the universe began, or the creation of sorts, or whatever you want to call it, okay? So, we're still talking about electromagnetic interaction. Now, we go from electromagnetic interaction to strong interaction. Strong interaction is at least 100 times stronger than electromagnetic interaction. It is the strongest of 4, obviously, which is why it's called strong interaction. Okay? This stuff is like really simple, as you can see thus far. Okay? And strong interaction is basically that which occurs between hadrons. Okay? Now, before I go any further, I guess, hadrons are one of many subatomic particles. Not necessarily elementary particles, because elementary particles are particles that are, of course, a little smaller. Okay? However, you have many subatomic particles. All right? Hadrons are one of many that occur during strong interaction. Okay? It is also responsible for the forces between nucleons, which is another subatomic particle. Okay? And nucleons, or even before I go any further with nucleons, the strong interaction is also responsible for the great stability of the atomic nucleus, okay, because of the fact that its interactions are they're very strong, okay? And so it operates at very short range in order for it to be as strong as it is. It has to operate at very strong range within the atom, okay? Now, if you have, and I know that this was not recommended, but, you know, if you have any questions, you know, the important thing is that you're getting the information, and that's most important to me. So if you do have a question, without going out there in left field somewhere, you know what I mean, ask the question. Is there anyone who has a question about any of the above thus far? Okay. Mm-hmm. We're getting there. We're getting there. Very good. But anyway, as we said, we're talking about, the reason why I'm going through this step by step is so that you can see what each one does and where it occurs and how it occurs, okay? Because what happens is generally individuals who are scientists or claim to be or whatever, they'll just throw these words out and they'll never go into what they do exactly and how they work and how they function, okay? Yeah. They act together. I mean, it is, they act cohesively. However, because of the, how can I say, they're separate and apart, but yet they act cohesively, okay? However, most scientists today tend to look at them as just being separate, okay? Because, well, that's, you know, how they think. They deal in opposites. Everything is opposite. Everything is, you know, chaos to them. You know what I mean? Nothing is complementary. If you ask them, well, you know, what is the opposite of man? They'll say woman. You know, when in fact there's nothing, you know, they're not in opposition. They're complementary parts. Okay? So, anyway, see, the thing is that straight up, I'm dealing with sound right reasoning. Okay? That's all I'm dealing with. And this is actually a part of that. Okay? Anyway, did I answer your question? Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. To the nucleus? The nucleus of what? Uh-huh. Okay. Well, that depends because there are other particles that are comprised of those particular particles as well. Like, for example, leptons, you know, carry neutrinos, tau particles, muons, okay, etc. Okay. Now what we're going to look at, you know, you wanted to add something else to that? Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. Now, the strong interaction, just to take it a step further, and bear with me, just please bear with me. Strong interaction, just to take it a little further, is, like I said, it operates at very short distance and is described by what they call a virtual exchange of mesons. All right, and this is visualized by, or described by what they call a gauge theory of chromodynamics. Chromodynamics basically describe the interaction itself, the strong interaction, okay, which is what they call quantum chromodynamics, okay? Now, finally, you have the weak interaction, which is actually stronger than gravitational interaction, but it's at least 1,000 times weaker than electromagnetic interaction. And the weak interaction basically occurs between the leptons and hadrons, okay, and is also responsible for the decay of what they call beta decay and other particles, okay. Also, in the current model, if you will, the weak interaction is basically seen or visualized as a force, okay, that is mediated by a virtual exchange of particles, okay, which are then mediated by what they call intermediate vector bosons, okay, which of course are another form or another set of subatomic particles, okay. Now the reason why I went through that in each one of the particles is because one decays into the other, okay, which gets into the decomposition of particles, all right. And the decomposition basically is transforming or spontaneous transformation of one particle into another, okay? Like you have a radioactive nuclei that transforms into a daughter nuclei, which may or may not be radioactive per se, okay, because it has emissions of photons, all right? Now, the other thing here is that, for example, let me just give you, I guess I can erase this part. So you can get a clearer picture of what's being said here. All right? You have hadrons, right? Which are also baryons, which decay into which decay into mesons. Okay, and the mesons carry three quarks. Okay. Okay. Contain three quarks. Now this decays into leptons, and photons. I'm sorry, I just got like an inspiration. Nah, it's like, because check this out. This is actually going to take us back to the Merlin thing, straight up. going to take us back to the Merlin thing. Okay. Now, the mesons, as I said, decay into leptons and photons. And if I'm going too fast at any point, just let me know. Yeah. The nucleon? Okay. The nucleon is basically the particle, if you will, for lack of a better term. It's a poor choice of words. But it is the particle that holds most of these together. Okay? Exactly. All right? But then I'm going to go past that. Okay? But anyway, you have the leptons and the photons, and they decay, or actually leptons, photons, or they're also referred to, or sometimes referred to as proton pairs. Okay? Which the proton pairs carry, proton pairs carry a quark and an antiquark. Okay? Carry quarks and antiquarks. So you can basically get an idea of how, each one works and what's connected with what. And just for the record, again, the leptons, as I said, contain what they call tau particles. Neutrinos. And electrons. Also muons, if you want to add that. Okay? Which actually, that's the true science of the tau. The symbol, okay? That's what the tau is. Deals with, particle physics. Okay? Of sorts, it does deal with that, sort of in an indirect way, okay? In an indirect way, okay? But there is a connection, okay? So you're not wrong at all, okay? I'm sorry, you had, okay, all right. Okay, so, which, by the way, just for the record, what do they call people who are considered to be insignificant when referring to, or how the elite might refer to the public or the masses? Very good, which is another subatomic particle. So actually, when they call you a peon or refer to you as a peon, it is quite significant because nothing else could be what it is without the peon. Okay? So, we're just putting things into their proper perspective. Okay, so then peon is also pi, which actually, contact. Resistance is futile. Contact, which was the movie, I'm kind of jumping just for a minute, but I'm going back. Contact was a movie that came out, as you know, in July, Jodie Foster, et cetera, et cetera. Most people expected it to be much like Independence Day and, some of the, shoot 'em up, bang, bang kind of, E.T. movies or what have you. However, it wasn't like that. And a lot of people were quite disappointed and didn't stay in the movies too long, but quite simply because it was for the individuals who are really on this level. Okay? Which again goes back to your Mark Twain twin reflections. Okay? You're getting one side, they're getting another. Or what they call el-haq, as in el-huckleberry fin. El-haq is the reality in the Arabic. All right? All right? So, anyway, in the movie, they were passing certain messages back and forth, blah, 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 blah. And basically, which wasn't Carl Sagan involved in that somehow or another? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Okay, very good. So anyway, it was basically tactical conversation. All right? Tactical conversation, which also dealt with a particular type of connection, which the connection at that point was completion. Completion is also what? In school, you learn this. Okay? However, pi isn't it complete? Okay, very good. Now, also, what lets you know that was the word itself. How is that? The word lets you know that it was complete because, let me just erase this. Here we go. Contact. Boom. Bam. 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 That was the ancient way of writing pi. You know what I mean? I don't know where that came into the picture. All right? But anyway, that's what that is. And that relates to this. Because it let them know that they were at another stage. All right? They had completed the last phase or stage, and now this is where they are. Okay? Okay? And actually, because I went there, I forgot about the other connection, but I'll give back there. But anyway, we talked about leptons, photons, proton pairs, how they break down. But also, like I said, they're all a part of another so-called subatomic particle, all right? The thing that glues everything together, and it's not the nucleon. I mean, it plays a part in there, and it glues something, you know, or a group of particles. However, beyond that goes back to what you had mentioned, which are tachyons. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I'm getting to that. Well, actually, just for you right now, I'll go there. Okay? Now, the first one, as we said, goes from the weakest to the strongest. The weakest is gravitational, right? I'll just write G. And then next, we have what? From gravitational, we have the weak interaction, right? Then we have electromagnetic interaction. Then we have strong interaction. There you go. Okay? Very good. What was I saying right before that? Oh, yes, tachyons, yes. Forgive me. I'm just out there, kind of. But anyway, yeah, so we have tachyons, which actually are considered to be the glue of the universe. They hold everything together. Why is that? Because even that you're dealing with subatomic particles, like hadrons, mesons, leptons, muons, blah, 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 okay? And, of course, quarks, right, and antiquarks, which actually, they're held together by gluons, okay, which are, they're considered to be massless particles because of the fact that they don't really have any charge. And the gluons are generally and sometimes described within a diagram called the Feynman diagram, all right, which kind of looks something like this. And then you have the squiggly lines in between, which actually are the exchange of photons, all right? And then on each side, you have the disbursement of electrons, okay? So, anyway, damn, what was I saying? I'm sorry, I just like totally just went out. But, oh, tachyons, thank you. But the tachyons, as I said, basically hold everything together. They're considered to be the glue of the universe. And they pass through and can pass through any kind of matter, okay? Fields, matter, etc. Okay, whereas the other particles can't. Okay, and this goes back to this. All right, why is that? Because you have. I got to write this somewhere else. I'm going to erase a lot of this. Is that cool? Okay. Not that you could really make out what it was, because it's like all kind of crammed together, but anyway. Okay, goes back to that, which of course takes you into dun, 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 your pyramids, right? Okay, and of course, you know, you have the one underneath that. Okay, so you have within the pyramid, you have this. What is this supposed to be? Yeah, what is it supposed to be? Anyway, it is the, yes, it is the, I erased it, it was up here, but it represents the, okay, or your wand again. Well, Brother Man's gone, but anyway, yeah, that was really for him, because I know he's like into the wand thing. But anyway, that's what it represents. Why is that? Because the staff of Tahuti, or Tahuti, or Thoth, or Thoth, you have to forgive me because, you know, I love to play with words. So anyway, that's what it represents, okay? Then it also deals with, or specifically, or more specifically deals with, the degree of light in the pyramid, which also represents the degree of light within the body, okay? Now, at each end, you have, which they're spirals of sorts, yes. Yeah, I guess you could say they're spirals. But they're also electron spirals, okay? And of course, the electron spirals, when fusing, well, first, before I go any further, the bottom pyramid, I'm kind of dulling this out for the simple reason that it deals with reflection, okay? Deals with, well, they both, for the most part, deal with ionization, right? Why am I writing with this like that? Okay. Deal with ionization. And, which we're going to get into that in a minute. That's going to be really, really interesting. Okay, they both deal with ionization. And okay, the electrons spiral, and oh, yes, yes, yes. And which eventually, what happens is that when light is refocused, it kind of does this. Which, of course, that's how the light emanates from the pyramid at that point, or is emitted from the pyramid. Which, again, of course, is your staff here, okay? So that's really the column of light that goes up like that, which, of course, happens within the body. This is also considered to be your 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have 2 tenaries, or tenaries, which then become your septenary. Okay? And in between, just in case you thought I was getting off the track, you have your tachyon energy. Okay? Because when the pyramid begins to break down the light, okay, it breaks it down into the subatomic particles, which are basically represented in your tachyons, or as your tachyons. Okay? And so basically, we can see or recognize that it is a form of an antenna that deals with, of course, electromagnetic fields. At least 3 electromagnetic fields, which goes back to this, okay? Because, you know, ions deal with the electricity or electrical charges. And so you have your 3, damn, it's chalk. You have your 3 electromagnetic charges or fields, okay, which deal with the 3 levels of consciousness, okay? Very good. Now, there was something else that I wanted to add to that, and it eludes me. But anyway, this is actually what the tachyon energy deals with, and what it does for the most part. Like I said, it basically glues or holds everything together. And also, just for the record, I know a lot of you have done a lot of research, and I know you're familiar with the Dogon of Mali. I know you're also familiar with the Hopi Native Americans, who were descendants. I'm sorry, the Dogon were descendants. Then, of course, you have the Nomos, or the Kachina, all right, that they pretty much learned most everything from. Okay? So, what is the connection here? The connection is that you're dealing with tachyon energy, but how so? I mean, what does that have to do with anything? How does it relate or connect with the Dogon? How does it connect with the Hopi Native Americans? It does in that this is what they understood. They understood the science of tachyon energy. And in understanding it, they understood that it moved at a certain rate with a group of angles, all right, getting back to geometry and what have you. However, all tachyon motion happens or moves at a 240-degree angle, okay? Now, again, what is the connection with these ancient people? Connection is that they understood that in using or going with the motion of the tachyon energy, all right, and aligning themselves with it, that it moved, or that they could create, if you will, what are known as standing columnar waves, okay? The standing columnar waves, which you have your insulators, and then you have what's considered to be the power. Are any of you familiar with what this does? I'm sorry? Exactly. But do you know what can be done with it? Yeah. Exactly. And how they did it was, or how they formed the waves, were basically, you have 360, right? 360 degrees, which is where you're starting. Then you move around to 240, right? Come back out, 120, back around, okay? There you go, all right? That is basically, well, part of or some of what the tachyon energy dealt with or deals with, okay? Okay, let me just erase this and get rid of this. Were there any questions thus far? Huh? Oh, okay. Huh? What? Oh, how do you spell? Oh, I'm sorry. Duh. Tachyon. Okay? Which is why you always hear, just for a moment, which is why you always hear, for those of you who watch Star Trek Voyager, you know, we got some tachyon emissions happening and so forth and so on. But anyway, what's your question? Exactly. Starts from 360, goes to 240, then to 120. Yeah, and then goes back around to 360. Sorry, my fault. Yeah. And it starts over again, yes. Okay? Also, you're dealing with what they call, or what it does is it creates polarity. Okay? And it polarizes the left and right hemispheres of the brain. All right? And is connected by, of course, your cerebral cortex. Okay? No, I said that basically what it does is create polarity. All right? No. What I'm saying is that the motion itself, okay, creates polarity between the left and right hemispheres of the brain because one has to be aligned or align themselves in order to create the standing column of waves through the ionization or electromagnetic field, which of course creates the tachyon motion, or rather moves with the tachyon motion. And in its polarization, what happens is that in creating the polarization, it is then connected by the cerebral cortex because, you have the left and right hemisphere, which is connected by the cerebral cortex, right? Very good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, poor diagram, yes, but nonetheless. Yeah. Yeah, basically, yeah, that was the movement, exactly, the movement. They understood it. They may not have used the term tachyon, but they understood the science here. Uh-huh. Very good. Yeah, which I'm actually going to get into in a minute. Okay? Uh-huh. Yeah, what were you saying? Oh, really? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Cool. But anyway, before I go any further, were there any other questions? Yes. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, this was the whole reason why we go through what they call the mukara, all right, which is the pilgrimage around the pyramid, okay? Because it also helps to align the body and creating the, how can you say, the measures the degree of light in the body and aligns you, basically. I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh, but if there's one more, you had another. To some degree. All right? Yeah.
Okay, this is what I've come to so far.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that we must worry about the electromagnetic field that we're going to be bombarded with in not too long a distance. And in order to be able to survive that kind of situation, we must be able to control the light that goes into the body and the way that our brain is functioning at doing that time.
Very good.
And all of this, what you just told us, explain to us technically how to get to that point.
Very good. That's the whole, exactly. That's the whole reason why I went through the interaction, the particular fundamental interactions, what they do, how they work within the universe, how they work, more importantly, within the body. You see what I'm saying?
The end of the statement, listening to a lot of people who think that we don't know what's going on right now, they have decided that different places on the face of the earth in which they will, if they're there, they can survive.
Yeah, but they're fooling themselves. They're fooling themselves.
Well, a lot of them are living in certain places because they think that because the magnetic field is so low,
Yeah.
until it won't hurt them.
Yeah, well, see, that's the operative phrase, think. Or word, is it word? Think. All right? But anyway, I don't want to focus on that. But I get what you're saying, and I hear what you're saying. But like I said, the whole thing, as you did point out, is basically how it gets back to, using it within the body and understanding, in particular, the interactions and what they do. Because, in other words, what happens is that you start dealing with something on levels that you may not completely comprehend. And of course, if you don't completely comprehend something, you're treading on thin ice, and you could very well hurt yourself and someone else. Okay, so that's why it's important to understand that. And like I said, when I'm dealing with the tetragrammaton and the words, okay, goes back into one of many of the ancient languages, of course, right? Which, of course, deals with the Hebrew, right? Then you had and have other ancient languages that have survived throughout history, or the story, if you will, that play a part in that. They play a part in, again, refocusing light, or helping or knowing how to refocus light, which goes back to the very thing that I hear people talk about a lot of times with vibration and sound and this, that, and the other, which it all plays a part, a key part in it, okay? And it is those sounds, all right, for example, when we deal with the tetragrammaton, or what they call the Yahweh or the Yahuwah, or, Yad-Evaye, or whatever, however you want to pronounce it, okay, that it basically is, how can I say, it is encoded into a language of light, okay? The language itself is a language of light, all right? And each one of the letters are encoded with the so-called fire letters, okay? This is why you always see the little flames over it, like you see like in books or what have you, okay? Now, yes, that they're encoded into language of light and so forth. That what happens is that it creates a new spectrum of light that biochemically respatializes you by activating certain chemistry in the mind, okay? That enables you to participate on the many planes of the wand. All right? Or is that word again? Okay? Now, in order to better understand this, because you hear we're mentioning all this stuff about light this, light that, light the other, and where its connection is with the particular interactions, is that it happens or works in steps, okay? Because light is broken down into photons, what they call photons, right? So it happens in steps, all right? That is, they are reinforced by the same frequencies that modulate mental energy into physical energy, okay? So, for example, when you use the word, all right, or know how to use the word, because there were only a certain group of people that knew the sound, all right? But anyway, when you know how to use the word, or the letters of light, so to say, what happens is that this goes back to the lexigramming, or helixogramming that we talked about in the very beginning, because the whole purpose of decoding and unscrambling the stuff is not to say, oh, yo, I just cracked the code. It's not about that. You know what I mean? What it is that it actually works in a way in which that once you've cracked the code, so to say, or you've gone through the series of combinations to come up with the ultimate combination, or cracking the combination, then what happens is that when it is formed in its proper, when it is formed in its proper formation, so to say, then what happens is that as you see it, right, and as you utter the sound, okay, and the word itself that is now unscrambled or decoded, so to say, and this is with most most anything in any of the ancient languages, and even in some cases the English language, that what happens is that they all begin to do this. The angles all begin to intersect, okay? Or the forms of light begin to intersect and meet here, okay? And when that happens, again, it encodes the body into the light via the interactions, okay? So everything begins to fall into place. All of the particular particles, the breakdown of particles, etc. Because then what happens is that you begin to understand how to fit each one into the different particles within the interactions, as I mentioned before. Are you following me? Okay, good. Are you with me, rather? I don't ask you to fall low. But anyway, that is basically what happens, okay? Because the reason why I said when you see it, okay, there's something happening within the mind, so to say, or within the brain. Why is that? Because light functions in the mind, light functions as what they call massor and microwave amplification, okay, which is basically stimulated by emissions of radiation, okay, which takes you into quantum mechanics, which basically is the interaction of atoms and molecules and energy and matter, okay. Now, these particular emissions, okay, and the massor and microwave amplification is then projected by what they call photoneurons, okay, because you have neurons and nerves and stuff in the brain, right? Okay, which are basically what they call quantum mechanistic corpuscles of light. Why is that? Because this again being light, as we said, or a form of light, or a series of forms of light, they begin bending, all right? Which takes you into wave corpuscles, all right? So, essentially, that is what happens. So, as I said, quantum mechanistic corpuscles of light, that happens within the mind. Like I said, the massor microwave amplification, photon amplification. So, now that we understand that, okay, yes, this takes us into the area of back to, as you know, as I said before, the tarot and the interactions. Now, this is the connection between those particular interactions and something that's a little more practical, okay? Which takes you into the area of Qigong, Tai Chi, or Tai Chi Quan. Why is that? Because, badam, right? You have from the Niwan, okay, to the Legong, right, or Lahgong, to the Middle Dantian, or the Tanjian area, okay, which actually is where you sync the Qi, all right, or when you begin moving the Qi, the mind and the Qi together, all right, this is actually starting to fit now, right, or becoming a little more practical, all right. Then from there, it moves down, okay, to the Ying Leng Quan, all right, which actually I'm going back and forth between Qigong and Tai Chi. So the terminology that I'm using is a cross between the two, okay? But to the Ying Leng Quan, which of course are the knees, from there it goes down to the heels, and the Yang Quan, which is the ball of the foot, and then it moves up to the Wei Lu area, the spine, all right? After it passes or goes past the Hun Ying, which is basically between the genitalia and the anus, right? Then it moves up the Wei Lu, all right, which is the coccyx. Then it moves to the Ming Meng, right? Then it moves from there. The Qi moves from there to what they call the Chai Chi, area, which is between the shoulder blades. Then from there, it moves to the Yung Ching, which is near the occipital bone, the medulla oblongata. Then moves from there back to the Niwan, or the Bahi, right? Now, when you start in Qigong, so better still, so you can see the connection, right? As I said, this is the Niwan, right? And, as I said, the Tanqian. Then from there, right, I'll bypass some of the others in between, but from there to the Yongguan area, right, to the Wei Lu. Why am I writing with this stuff? Like I don't have any chalk here. To the Wei Lu area, okay. Then from there to the Ming Meng. Damn. From there to, as I said, what they call the Jai Chi, or some spell it differently depending on which form or rather dialect you are using. And then from there back to the Yu Chen. Then back to the Niwan, all right, which happens in a circular motion, all right, which the form itself, Tai Chi, whichever form that you're using, Tai Chi on a whole is basically a circle or cyclical, continuous, spherical form, okay? And like I said, the most important thing in dealing with that, and the whole point of that, is to help you to better understand, in terms of learning, the internal system and internal mechanisms, all right, and how they work and how to activate certain chi areas, all right, which of course stimulate or activate certain organs, right? And then of course you have certain secretions that play a part in that, are responsible for that. Then you have, of course, certain glands that play a part in that. Then you have, beyond that, you know, you have certain cells, then the molecules, right, which break down to other particles and break down to other particles, which break down to subatomic particles, blah, 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 okay? And then on back out. It spirals inward, then it spirals outward, which goes back to the spiral, okay? Now, like I said, but in terms of, like I said, first moving the chi from gathering the chi, sinking it down to the Tanqian area, with the mind, of course, being at the base of the Tanqian area. Why is that? This is very important. You have a lot of people who practice Tai Chi or claim to understand it or know it, what have you, but in many cases or many instances, they don't, all right? And the reason why I say that is because this takes you into the I Ching, right? The I Ching is also called the Book of Changes, right? Now, within the Book of Changes, you notice all of these little lines and dots, and, you know, it's almost like Morse code or something, you know, for lack of a better term. But anyway, you have 63rd hexagram. And the 63rd hexagram looks something like this. Yes. Okay? Right? You have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, which are made up of trigrams. Okay? Now, the first set of trigrams are referred to as Kan. K-A-N. All right? And the second set, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, yeah. And the second set is La or Li, which basically one is fire, one is water, and the other is fire. All right? And the fire basically deals with the mind. which is very detrimental, which is why when people become sick or ill or have disorders, right, what happens? A lot of times they die almost when they could have actually had a full recovery. But that was because the mind took over and boom, you know, the rest is history. Okay, so it's important to sync the chi and the mind below the chi, which the chi initially is a form of water, right? Because it goes from the kidneys of sorts, all right, to the Dantian area. Okay, so it sinks below, okay, this would be the mind, I guess, if you will, right? And this would be the chi, right? So think of it as a pot, right? Something like that. And you have fire beneath the pot, right? You have water in between, right? And when it heats the water, what happens? Steam comes up, which basically is your chi, right? Okay? Which is also known as the hexagram of entrapment. So it is very dangerous if you really don't know what you're doing, okay? So now what happens is that with this, we go into the alchemical transmutation of water into chi and qing into chi, which qing basically deals with the semen, which we all have. Mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure I'm still with you.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to develop your ability to learn, you should get into meditation or Tai Chi or something like that. Is that what you just said?
Of sorts, yeah. However, Tai Chi is very unique, not to negate or rule out the others, okay, because they are very good.
But basically that's what you said.
Yeah, of sorts, but I'm not done.
I'm just trying to make sure I don't get lost.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, let's
All right.
go on.
Okay. Now, as I was saying that it's very, very important to know the balance between the two, which of course deals with your yin and your yang, right? When one reaches its peak, it produces the other, and vice versa, okay? However, it is most important to learn how to invest in loss. Why is that? Because in investing in loss, all right, it allows the other person or opponent to always strike with force, okay? And that we're dealing with the round form or the spherical form, which emulates the great ultimate, which is the universe, okay, which is a sphere in and of itself, okay, that could not be supported by chi if it were not round or did not have the round form, okay? So again, it is extremely important to understand the concept of investing in loss, okay? Now, just going back very quickly to the alchemical mutation, all right, like I said, is learning how to sync the chi, and then, like I said, building the chi and pointing out the particular vital points within the spine or the two meridian, okay? Why is that? Because this is one of the reasons why, like I said, going back to illnesses and diseases, there are a lot of people have illnesses and diseases and disorders, and they don't begin to understand why. For example, like lung disorders like tuberculosis, okay? Now, to begin with, the lungs are very weak. It is a very weak organ, okay? I don't care who you are, how strong you are, where you come from, whatever. Very weak organ to begin with, all right? Because it is, by and large, separate and apart from the digestive system, which, by the way, is one of the reasons why, when eating chickens, that for those of you that do eat chicken, or must eat chicken, at least be smart about it, the breast part is the safest part to eat for the simple reason that it is separate and apart. So when it goes through the decontamination process and they, inject it with poisons, antibiotics, whatever you want to call it, all right, it tends to settle in the limbs, okay, rather than the breast or chest area, okay. So anyway, going back to tuberculosis and lung disorders, okay, basically happens because, like I said, first and foremost, the lungs are a weak area. Secondly, because, all right, that chi area is basically weak. And a lot of individuals don't really know, well, that it's even there, or even how to direct it or move it. Okay? So, athletes, for example, tend to store great levels or amounts of chi, though they don't really realize it, which can also be very detrimental, because what happens is that the chi, which is eventually moved down to the pocket area, all right, which is 1.3 inches below the navel, all right, that pocket area can collapse. Once it collapses, the chi becomes very erratic, and it starts moving around, you know, and if it builds up in one particular area, it has what you call chi swellings, all right, and then certain disorders begin to set in or what have you, all right. Now, in the case of tuberculosis, if you've ever noticed, doctors, physicians, clinicians, whoever they call themselves, when they diagnose a patient with tuberculosis, they'll say, go home and get plenty of rest. You need rest. All right? So when you go home and you rest, what happens? It seems to get worse. Why is that? Because it doesn't allow for the inhalation-exhalation exchange. Because the lungs are considered to be the so-called hanging bell in the medical Chinese classics. That's what it's referred to as a hanging bell. Why is that? Because when you turn a bell sideways and you hit it, what happens? You get a mute sound, do you not? Right? So now when this happens, eventually it will cause problems within the 2 meridian or the spine, because each one of the organs are attached to the spine. Right? Very good. So now what happens is that eventually you'll start to have deficiencies or decline in the 2 meridian, particularly the kidneys, all right, which goes back to Kan, dealing with water, all right, because it travels downward, okay? Now, once that happens, rest assured that you will begin to have problems in the spleen area, okay? This is why it's important to develop and cultivate, if you will, the chi area, particularly near the kidneys, all right? Because then it will, in succession, begin building in the other areas like the spleen, which is considered to be the mother of the lungs, because it nourishes the lungs. All right? The kidneys are considered to be the root, because the kidneys send or convey vital fluids to the kidneys. Okay? So now what happens is that, like I said, you're developing these chi areas in the kidneys and in the lungs. And once this happens, you know, of course, the lungs are strengthened, and the possibility of any kind of illness or disorder, as it were, in that area is very slim to none, okay? As a matter of fact, because of this, I know of cases personally where individuals were diagnosed as having tuberculosis in its tertiary stage, okay, have full recovery, all right, as well as other disorders and diseases, all right, basically by developing the chi, or learning how to move the chi. And like I said, the alchemical transmutation of turning chi, water into chi and qing into chi, like I said, which is basically dealing with semen, which goes back to synergistic exchange of properties, if you will, that basically is a combination of two things, like drugs or hormones or what have you, that when they work together create a whole nother kind of effect rather than they would if they were separate and apart. Okay? For example, you have in the adrenal cortex, it basically produces steroid hormones, right? I'm sorry, the adrenal cortex, the testes, the ovaries, okay, placenta, produce, as I said, these particular steroid hormones, which are then, well, for the simple reason that the biosynthetic pathways are very similar in both the testes and the ovaries, okay, which are regulated by what they call triiodothyronine, okay, which regulates testosterone and is a precursor for estrogen, okay? Now, which that in and of itself tells you that each one contains a little bit of the other, okay? So, now that we understand that, this goes back to the semen thing, all right? And so we're talking about changing semen into chi, right? Then we're talking about changing chi into spirit, and spirit into emptiness, or back to nothingness, or what have you, or whatever the term you want to use. All right, so there are various different stages of developing chi, all right? And those stages consist of particular phases. Like you have 9 phases within those stages, all right, which basically deals with what they call developing softness, all right? And the importance of that is that that is the only way you can really develop and cultivate the chi, all right? Otherwise, if you come in with all this, and, you know what I mean, ain't nothing happening. It ain't happening, all right? But this is why even most, if not all, of the other arts or forms, or art forms, martial arts, they have much respect for Tai Chi because they know it deals with the inward, outward, right? Not to mention, it is not just, you know, standing there doing this all day long and all of that. It is also, not that it's used as that, because it is an offensive type of martial arts, okay? It doesn't smell, but, you know, it's offensive. But anyway, forgive my dry humor. But anyway, because it deals with, again, like I said, the round form, or the roundness, and as well, in dealing with the roundness, it deals with the centripetal and centrifugal forces, right? All right? And the exchange of these forces actually are that which is responsible for the sphere itself, all right? Without those particular forces, it could not have the spherical form. And this is what can help an individual, I mean, not for the purpose of just doing that, but, you know, if attacked by someone, you can use it to your advantage. Because as we discussed yesterday, I think it was, when we talked about Tai Chi being as a sheet of paper, you know what I mean, or what they call 4 pounds, or 4 ounces rather, moving 1,000 pounds. You know what I mean, how you see the smallest people, like, just breaking through, you know, 6 and 7, you know, things of steel, or wood, or what have you, okay? And, which is one of the benefits. Again, like I said, that's not why we're doing it and why we're into it and all of that. However, you can develop chi to the degree or the level of what they call essential hardness, developing essential hardness. Why is that? Because when you begin to isolate the particular vital points in the 2 meridian, all right, and going from the Wei Lu, moving the chi from the Wei Lu to the other points, to the Chai Chi, Ming Meng, and the Yu Chen and the Niwan, what happens is that it eventually begins moving on its own and collects in the Renzong area in between the eyes, and then it eventually moves down to the Tanqian area and becomes water again. Now, once that happens, it then becomes fatty fluid, all right, a form of fatty fluid, which then becomes solid matter. When it becomes solid matter, it's in the form of bone marrow, all right? This is one of the reasons why, one of many reasons why animals generally are stronger than humans, okay? Because, like a tiger, for example, has rock-hard marrow, all right, because there are no gaps in between, all right? So, in developing the essential hardness, even before I go any further with that, the thing with animals is that you stand erect, do you not? Vertical, right? Straight up and down. Now, one of the advantages to that is that it is the thing that gives you your intelligence, all right? Or plays a part in your intelligence. The downside to that is that you have your organs one on top of the other. They're stacked on each other. So because they're stacked on each other, there's no room for movement, okay? The connective tissue and the membrane in between just hangs down. It doesn't move. So what happens is that over a period of time, it begins declining, and then you start walking like this, you know what I mean? And then you all, you know what happens. But anyway, the animals, on the other hand, okay, as in the case of tigers, what have you, they are horizontal. So as they begin to move, right, there's a swaying motion back and forth, and the connective tissue is exercised, all right? So actually, it helps to build the bones, okay? Now, one of the things or forms that can help with that, and the other things that I mentioned, is what they call the Wu-Tang, Cheng Seng Feng form helps with that, okay? Opposed to the Shaolin. The Shaolin basically deals with the external external forms, okay? Any questions thus far about any? To cultivate the Tai Chi, basically, like I said, is basically learning simply how to concentrate, right, and to be able to move the Qi to the particular or different vital points, or what they call acupoints, as an acupuncture. But the only thing is that you're doing it mentally and you're developing softness, all right? And in developing the softness, it helps or plays a part in you being able to move the Qi much more freely and easily, okay? Okay, well, basically, that's part of it. That would lend itself more to the Qigong, all right, which basically there are different forms of Qigong, which is what they call the relaxing and calming Qigong. Then they have what they call shell Qigong, which basically is like that, and then it moves through different stages, okay, which you can do lying down, standing up, okay, or basically sitting down, okay. And even with the Tai Chi, you can do that at any time and practice anywhere. And you can develop it at any time, even while you're sleeping, all right? Basically, sleeping like that, you know, one leg over the other like that, which how some of us sleep, you know, like that anyway. And developing the Qi, basically allowing yourself to relax to the point where there's no, hardness, if you will, okay? I'm sorry, before I go any further, somebody had a, yeah. Not really. I mean, it has, there are parts of it, you know, in all of the martial arts, all right? In order to achieve the levels of the martial arts, whichever martial arts you're talking about, you have to go through some form or deal with some form of Tai Chi, all right? I'm sorry, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You said basically that if the circle is not completed down, the energy releases and start to focus when Qi swell.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to when an athlete gets to that point where they, we know athletes build Qi.
Mm-hmm.
When they get to that point where the Qi becomes so strong that what must they do at that point?
Well, that's what I'm saying. They have to learn how to direct it, just like with anything else. I mean, if you learn how to shapeshift, or if you learn how to, do any other kind of feat, as it were, you have to learn direction and learn how to use it. Otherwise, it becomes a lethal weapon, and in most cases, to yourself. Yeah. I'm sorry. In many instances, yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Focus it, seal it, lock it in. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Can you give me an example of somebody that has focus and how would
Mm-hmm. I would say, again, some of the so-called, I can't tell you individuals per se by name, but I can tell you that a lot of times, again, going back to a lot of the disorders, most of the disorders, happen quite simply because of the fact that they have not learned to concentrate and focus the energy. This actually played a part. It may have been another terminology for it, or what have you, at other points and periods and times in history, but this played a part in the whole concept of immortality, all right, or individuals becoming the immortals, all right, as in the case of Highlander, all right. It's no coincidence that they put that on TV, all right, and have been talking about it. Matter of fact, there are individuals in the CIA right now and other levels of government that are immortals, all right, but I mean, they don't broadcast that, all right, who have and are living for 1,000 years and all of that, okay? So once the individual understands and knows what the body needs and what's required, all right, then they can subsist perpetually. Why? Because, again, going back to the form Tai Chi, using that as an example, being a replica of the great ultimate, or the universe as it were, dealing with the round form and all of that, and containing the infinite triangles, okay, which is a basic construction of the circle and all of that, that it is something that has inexhaustible energy, does it not? And you're created from it and a part of it. I am a part of the all, and the all is a part of me. I can succeed in the all, etc., 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 etc. Okay? I am one with the all. So, you know, these are words that become your wand. Okay? Okay? How would you know? Yeah, you would. Exactly. You would, as in the case of what you're discussing now that you have done, you begin feeling the changes. Okay. Just perfect example. There you go. Exactly. 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 Yeah. So the yeah. Uh-huh. Exactly. Yeah. If you make it, like the brother pointed out, if you make it a part of your everyday life, just like brushing your teeth or whatever else, all right, this is why I said it's essential to whether it's Kundalini, whether it's Tai Chi, whether it's any of the others that deal with that softness and developing the energy, etc. Basically, you have to incorporate it into every aspect of your life, from sitting down to talking to whatever, okay? That's why there are different forms and different methods that can be incorporated into that, even down to eating. Why do you think in China these individuals were sitting down, right, and they got the chopsticks or what have you, and they're eating like that? They're not eating like that because the rice is small and they can't pick it up, because that is a part of the culture in developing qi. The simple movement. Why is that? Because it stimulates and activates certain secretions that play a part ultimately in those particular interactions that we talked about. But now taking it to the next level, like in Tai Chi, when I went through all of the other things, is because ultimately then you get to the level of being able to what they call listen to energy. Then when you listen to energy, which is the inner chi, okay, then you can then begin to, how can I say, interpret it. Then once you can interpret the energy, then you have what they call complete clarity. Okay? That complete clarity is to the degree where, for example, this is my opponent, and he's coming or about to attack me or whatever he's about to do, all right? Which is why when you see in the karate flicks and all, like Bruce Lee, whomsoever, okay, why they could be like this fighting three guys, and all of a sudden, pap, you know what I mean? Because they can feel it, all right? That's real. That ain't no joke. Or like when you see these video games now, right, and they're, and they got the guys, all of these fighters and all of that, and one guy does like this, don't even touch the guy, and he goes flying across the room somewhere. That's what dealing with that is about, and that's why it's very dangerous. Which is why, again, when I talked about decoding and all of that, why people get into the whole thing about, oh, yo, I just cracked the code, or yo, look at me, I can fly, and all of these other things, you understand, which are simple parlor tricks, you know what I'm saying, once you understand the science, but people are misusing it, all right? And these are the same individuals that, walk around talking about, yo, you know what I'm saying, why are you looking at me? Why are you stepping on my sneakers? Now, can you imagine if they had that kind of power? So, it's real. Yeah. Exactly. Well, I'll give you a perfect example. That depends on us, or those who are considered to be the righteous, whoever that might be. Whether it's 1, 2, 5. That's one of the reasons, and many of the other distractions and other forms of silent weapons technology that has been used, even partly in the language. All right? Because communication, man, is key. Whether you can read, whether you can't read. All right? I mean, that's what we do in life. You know what I mean? That's why things happen or don't happen in many instances or cases on the physical level, is because of too much or lack thereof communication. It's just like when the police stop you and they say, halt, who goes there? Now, we understand their function and their job and all of that, and we understand that some of them are the beasts and they're, you know, reptilians or whatever you want to call them. But the thing is that when they stop you, halt, who goes there, identify yourself as an ancient Rome is what they did, which is what they're doing now. They expect you to say who and what you are. So in most instances, individuals cannot identify who they are. It's just like when Captain Janeway of the Voyager went into Krenim space, and they said, you're in, you know, territory that's you know, it's not your territory, or not your turf. Identify who you are. I'm Captain Janeway of the Starship Enterprise of the Federation, blah, blah, blah. Still didn't say who you were. You can show me ID, but it still don't say who you are. And if you do show me ID, I might be lenient, but it still doesn't say who you are, because that identification as such says that you are a corporation. And that you've entered into a contract or a series of agreements. This is one of the reasons why, getting back to the whole Moorish thing, to claim and reserve the right to claim your nationality. All right, which goes back to the Articles of Confederation, 1787, right? Okay, so this is what will actually, if it is used effectively, will allow you and afford you the time to concentrate and focus on those other things. Most of us are catching heartache and pain and turmoil and all of the other things is because we fail to understand how things really work. So how can we be ready for all of the other things that we, you know, heard our ancient ancestors and you know, and other civilizations and galaxies do? You understand? When we can't even operate within the confines of where we are right now because of the lack of communication. You understand? Which is why you are relegated and subjected to being a statutory citizen rather than a common law citizen. Right? Well, I know my rights. The 14th Amendment says blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? That was the very thing that set us back at least 50 to 100 years. Okay? You're not protected by the law if you don't know the law. But if you stand on the law or universal law as such, for which the Constitution was thereby based on, all right, and the Moorish zodiac, okay, and you're using it the way in which it's supposed to be used, then it can be your sword. Or your wand in this case. Right? It's real, man. It's on. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, anytime you walk around with anything that's like that, corporation, yo. Corporation. And that you are regulated and relegated under these particular statutory jurisdiction, all right, that was changed over in 1938, Erie versus Railroad, 1938, okay, that everything went from public law to public policy, commercial contracts, colorable commercial contracts, okay? This all plays a part in where we started with the scientific stuff and all of that, you understand? That's the real science. Taking back what's yours and how it works and knowing how it works and how to apply it. That also plays a part in developing and cultivating chi. Because once you know how to develop it and cultivate it, it works in every aspect of your life where you will bring certain things to you and keep certain things away from you. You understand? Hey. Sound right reasoning, experience and evidence. Question? Anyone?
So what's
Brother man, brother man, brother man. I'm going to tell you now. First of all, it's to be more succinct and more accurate, it is trace. And the race thing was, again, something that came into being, as in the case of the silent weapons technology, through the language that's been used and that we've been using to reinforce those particular spells, right? I cast a spell on you, and we've been reinforcing it, all right, with those particular words and not understanding how the words work, as it were. So it is a psychic linguistic use of words, you understand, that can do this, can elevate you, or do just the opposite, which in our case, or in most of our cases, it is done just the opposite. Yeah, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, are they all got standards, or are they teaching different types of shit?
Different types of...
You know, I mean, how can you determine that someone teaching the correct chin?
Well, that's not for me to determine. If they are, they are. If they're not, they're not. However, I know, based on my personal experience, all right, and evidence and research and application, more importantly, all right, that it is correct. Now, as to whether or not they're, I don't care. You know what I mean? I'm sorry if they are, and, you know, and if they're not, whatever. But, hey, ain't my responsibility. Now, once someone steps into my arena and asks me to assist them, or, you know what I mean, or play a part in their cultivation or what have you, as it were, or development, then yes, then I am responsible. But beyond that, that's one of our problems. We so busy trying to save the world and worrying about what everybody else is doing, we can't even save ourselves, for the most part. But that's what we're working on, and that's what we're trying to do and get to by individuals like yourselves coming together collectively. You understand? Whenever you come together like this and build, or build creation, not recreation. I'm sorry.
I come around here, and I'm also I'm a street hustler, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this guy was not in that environment.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do they fit in the picture?
How do they fit in the picture? Well, basically, it's like this. Like I said yesterday to the brother standing at the door, I said, yo, bottom line is talent seeks its own level. You understand? People like myself, like you good people here, Bobby Hammond, Delbert Blair, they've been putting this information out for a while. Now, again, it's not for everybody because everybody's not going to gravitate to it. It's just like many of the books in here. You understand? A lot of people will come in here and it'd be like, yeah, okay, whatever. Now, most of you will walk in here and see all kinds of jewels. You understand? Because, you know what I'm saying, you're moving in that direction. You've already had those little, if you will, DNA explosions. You know what I mean? Now, whether or not it will happen for them and when it's going to happen is when it's going to happen for them. If it doesn't, oh well, sorry. Nothing personal. We get so caught up in this emotional thing. Now, it can be a tool, but it's also been a very dangerous weapon for most of us. I mean, most of the crime that you see occurs, justified or not, as it were, in the eyes of the warped law, is based on what? Emotion. As far as we're concerned, the people, you understand, which is why we haven't been policing the government like we're supposed to be doing and letting them run shit. You see what I'm saying? And they know that, and they're playing on that. That's why they treat us like they do, because it's like, look, shit is above their heads, man. They can't understand this. You know what I mean? They're always worried about why me. You know what I mean? Why me? Why is this happening to me? Not understanding what the cause was for the effect and what caused the cause to have an effect. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, yo, and as far as they're concerned, as far as I'm concerned, I'm in agreement with them as far as that goes. We cannot waste our time on one ignorant person. Figuratively and literally speaking. You know what I'm saying? It's too late for that. You know what I mean, we had individuals like Malcolm and, you know what I'm saying, and Marcus Garvey and all that, you know, that did their job, and that's what they were there for. You understand? And even as powerful and as magnetic and charismatic and all of the above as they were, you still had knuckleheads out there. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yo, you know what I mean? I mean, the guy that they call Jesus, or whatever name you want to call him, he couldn't save the world. So what makes you think, you know what I'm saying, that we are? Can you reproduce yourself? You do that every day.
Every 7 years.
In terms of reproduction of cell or cell regeneration, all right, that happens throughout the rest of the body outside of the brain itself, which has 42 billion electromagnetic cells. In answer to your question, however, you do that every day by virtue of the fact that the you of you, not this you, but the you of you, leaves and re-enters the body when you wake up. Okay? About, what is it? Dark matter? Uh-huh. So if they can't comprehend it, ain't my problem. You know what I mean? By virtue of the fact that we've been here building as we are and as we have been, all right, and we went through, you know, atomic structure, particle physics, and all of that, and we can comprehend it as we have, then that's what's important. I ain't worried about them. I'm not expending any energy on any of their theories, any of their hypotheses, whatever. I mean, that may sound cold and fucked up or whatever, but yo, I ain't wasting no time on that. Yeah. Okay, fine. You understand to this degree or this level, by virtue of the fact that you shared it with me, that this is what they're probing or delving into and trying to crack a code of sorts. It's funny how things work, because all this time they've been diligently, assiduously working on making everything, coding everything so that we can't understand it, and it's backfired. So the fact that it's backfired, that they've gotten back to the root and the origin of everything that they can't fucking understand, all right, then that's their problem. That's what they get for playing with things and going and delving into areas that they were not supposed to be delving into anyway. So for those of us who have risen to the occasion, all right, and can confound even the so-called intellect, all right, in this age and stage of information, I mean, think about it. They've been working on this stuff for years and years and years and years and years and years, dedicated their whole lives to this stuff, and still can't understand it. You and most of the people like myself in the last 2 or 3 years, bam! You tell me. You tell me.
Break it down. Just like that. God.
That's what I'm talking about.
You're going to get it. You're going to get that in a matter of weeks.
That's what I'm talking about. Right knowledge, universal knowledge.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, in short, like I said, you know, mostly everything, you know, is, like I said, it's encoded. I mean, I gave you some examples, you know, mild examples, whatever. Everything is encoded in such a way, you know, it has been in what they, for as far as I'm concerned, and as far as I know, based on my research, in Masonic code. You see what I'm saying? Which is, matter of fact, the whole judicial system is, you know, like so-called high masonry. Huh? Not, yeah. Personally, I mean, if you know, I haven't really, you know, delved into that. I mean, break it down. I mean, open it up, open the science up. Yeah. No, I mean, Okay, I'll give you a perfect example. I mean, not Nike per se, but it's good that you touched on that. I mean, you take, for example, I mean, I went through this back in the early days, but Nautica, right? I mean, we know it's navigation, right? Which basically deals with how individuals have been, or select individuals, have been navigating the public as far as, you know, these brand names, this, that, and the other. It also deals with time. And also, notice. You've been given a notice that you ain't got much time, all right? And if you ain't got your shit together by the time is up, you know what I mean, then sorry. You know what I mean? Because bottom line is that, in other words, they've been telling you exactly what they're doing, what they're planning on doing, etc. However, but if you can't rise to the occasion, all right, and you can't read between the lines after you've then spent 12 years in school, maybe 4 years in college, and then, you know, graduate school, and in many cases, we, the government, have given you loans and all of these other things, and you've learned with the best, so-called best teachers and scholars and professors, all right, and you've taken 12 years and some odd years of English and English lit, all right, and you've had all of the so-called key references, and you cannot connect them, then shame on your fucking ass.
That's right.
That's what that is, all right? That's just a mild example of Nautica, or what, you know, Nautica is. I mean, we said, a long time ago, DKNY was DK New York. You know what I mean? It's in a state of decay. It's rotten Big Apple. All right? But, you know, I mean, the list goes on of things. I mean, you take, for example, Catholicism, right? Listen, I don't know what you're talking about, all right? All I know is that you don't come in here. You come here every day and you don't pay me money. You read my magazines and I'm going to have to call the police. And you talk about Catholicism. I don't understand this. All I know is that you must pay me. Otherwise, I call the police. Check him. Check him. But anyway. Yeah, Catholicism, okay? Now, Catholicism is the equivalent of what I just talked about. Why? Because you have, this goes into breaking down the language too, and the lexigramming and blah, 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 helixgramming. Cyst, right? Which can go one of many ways, all right? Which, in this case, is... Which in this case, what's wrong? Oh, yeah. Which in this case, I'm not going to write the whole thing out, but in this case is a receptacle for sacred or secret utensils. All right? And in this case, utensils is silent use. Right? Now, which of course was a receptacle for sacred or secret utensils in where? Ancient Rome, which was and is the capital for Catholicism, right? Now, to take it a step further, cyst, utensils, silent use, which is secret, right? Which is also ion, because it deals with secretion. Why is that? Secretion, ion, but anyway, as we know, an ion is an atom or group of atoms that either lost one or more electrons, right? Making it positively charged, as in a cathode and an anode, right? But anyway, also, as I said, originating in ancient Rome, we know is also an omer, or an omer. Why is that? I'm sorry. But an omer, which actually, an omer is a Hebrew measurement, okay, of 1/10 of an ephah. An ephah also deals with a unit of Hebrew dry measurement, okay? Stay with me now and listen very carefully. And the reason why I say listen very carefully is because this goes back to also understanding the language and decoding things to the point where you can even hear things at a certain point or level after you've done it long enough and know exactly what's being said, all right? If you watch television, you hear a lot of things that they say is like, boom, you know that it's something entirely different from what they're suggesting. But anyway, but omer, like I said, deals with form of measurement, Hebrew measurement, et cetera, which is also Rome, omer, which is also armor, right? And an armor deals with what? Shielding, right? Now, if it deals with shielding, that means you're dealing with a suit, right? A suit of what? Shielding that does what? The suit fits, right? There's a match. It fits. There's a match. Now, that you're dealing with armor and a suit, and that I mentioned before that we talked about the secretion being the ion dealing with electrons, and the positively, negatively charged electrons, so forth. Secretion takes you into ATCH. Now, this is all Catholicism, mind you. Takes you into ACTH, which is adrenocorticotrophic hormone, right? And the adrenocorticotrophic hormone, as we know, is produced by corticotrophins, which basically is produced in the, or by the anterior pituitary gland, right? In response to stress that controls secretion of certain hormones. Now, this being the case, we know that this deals with oil, right? As in Rome, as in Greece, okay? Now, also, this deals with why is adrenocorticotrophic hormone important or significant, and that we're talking about the pituitary gland. Because when we talk about the pituitary gland, now stay with me, this is all Catholicism. The pituitary gland, when you begin smelling or inhaling noxious gas or gases, what happens? There is an inhibitory effect that takes place with the regulation and the secretion of thyroxine, okay, which is one of the chief hormones that is secreted by the thyroid, okay? So then what happens at that point is that ACTH takes over, or it has to compensate for the lack of the production of this hormone that is to be secreted, okay? Which, of course, goes back or deals with the oil, okay? So, which deals with, that being the case, means that it plays a part in the control, right, or measurement or amount of information that they give out, right? They secrete the information. And when it's, when they decide that, well, that's just enough, we don't need to give them anymore, it's like, boom, because we know most of the stuff is being run via or by or in connection with the Vatican, right? Right? Which are the architects of Catholicism, right? And Christianity and whatever else. Boom, 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 boom. So that's what that plays a part in. Then you have from there, this is still all Catholicism. From there, you have ration, which you have, very good. I don't want to get into that. But anyway, takes you into tick. Why is it a tick? Because a tick, in this case, deals with the twitching muscles, or those of the face, which is associated with facial neuralgia, which is, it is a disorder of sorts, or nervous disorder, okay, that most, of them have, or tend to have. But anyway, that this also deals with the twitching of muscles, which deals with a back and forth kind of sway, right, that happens, which means that somebody is two-faced, right, which actually, the twitching that deals with face is also cafe, right? It is. Anagrammatically, it's cafe, right? Which is coffee, which is also café or cafferón, concealers of the truth. In the Arabic, cafferón, right? Which is why they call you kafir, because they feel that you're concealing and hiding stuff that you have been so brainwashed that you don't even remember, at least so they feel, that you don't even remember, and how dare you not give this to us? So as a result, we must make your life a living hell. Because you block, right? Block information that they need, okay? So anyway, this deals with the switch, right? Switch on and off, which also goes into the area of sense and anti-sense. What is sense and anti-sense? Sense and anti-sense is actually dealing with one side of the double helix, right, in DNA, all right, the 4 nucleotides, blah, 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 and the switch, which goes back to, somebody talked about this yesterday, said something about implants being used with the young people, all right? Now, implants in one sense, yes, but not in the conventional sense that we might be thinking, where they have under the Atomic Energy Commission, all right, and the Cambridge Institute and the Rockefeller Foundation, all right, and monies having been allocated specifically for these types of experiments since 1938, all right, where this is where they came up with the term molecular biology, all right, and they've been, matter of fact, they selected under a project called the Human Genome Project some 50,000 or more genes specifically to be able to control higher cortical functions, all right? This is all Catholicism. Exactly. All right? This is what Catholicism is and how it plays itself out in all people activity. From the apex to, the base.
I was thinking, you said a few minutes ago, 12 years of high school, 4 years of college, entering into corporate America, television, all types of information, and you still fucking crazy. Well, how can you expect for us to help you out in any way when we've been trying to tell you that there's something going on, and you just haven't caught up with it, right? Basically, that's what you said.
Yeah, but
I got something else to say.
yeah, okay, go ahead.
And then you say from the time of ancient Rome, and we could even go back a little bit farther, from the time that we really came upon these people, and they came upon us. There was this huge game being played. All of a sudden, I would say in the last 10 years, it has not been any more than 10 years, and 10 years is being very generous. Black folk is acting like popcorn, at least American black folk. It's like sitting them on a stove with a pot with no top on. And when it heats, they started, knowledge is just falling on us. Even our children, babies is, my grandson who's 3 called and said, "Hi, grandmama," and it's just as clear. And he wants to know things that I don't know even anything about. Born free.
Yeah.
There's a reason for everything.
Of course.
How can we get all of this knowledge and then say to the gentleman in the back here, well, let's just forget those people on the street?
Well, that's why everything happens for a reason. Fine. He's here. And others like him, who in this case is me, because I'm out there too every day on mass transit pushing my stuff every day. All right? Now, if it happened to me, okay, we're talking about 1995. All right? Where I had my so-called awakening or quickening or whatever you want to call it, okay? That it happens to others when it's supposed to happen. Now, you can assist and say things or like he might run across one of those brothers and sisters out there, wherever he is, and say one thing that might spark something. He might just say a word, right? Because of the reverberation of whatever word it is he uses. I don't know. I could stand there for 10 hours talking to the person saying, yo, boom, 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 boom. They may not get it. He might say, yo, boom, you know, peace is the word or something. And I don't know, it just might spark something or trigger something. It might cause, you know, chemical reactions or something. Boom. And they like, oh, yo, you know what I mean? And then be walking down the street and see somebody, you know, on the street, book vendor with these kind of books and just like gravitate, and the rest is history. You know what I mean? So, like I said, you know, universal law governs all events. Son, you need Jesus, son. You need Jesus. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
I'm saying this brother done a beautiful job, and I'm talking about it's useless. I'm talking about they don't want it.
Exactly. Yeah, I know.
So I'm saying if we in there because we want it, and they out there because they don't want it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, basically, you know what I mean? It's like I said, it's like when you mentioned earlier about, you know, the different forces and, you know, as sure as there was a God, there was a devil, whatever you want to call it, right? And that you have a certain respect for it, right? It's just like those individuals that have been doing all of this, creating all this chaos or whatever, that have been using these sciences to whatever degree they understand it, right? They know that this is the time that we're coming into this, which is why, you know what I'm saying, they've been passing crazy laws like you can't walk down the street with a wand. What the fuck is up with that? You know what I mean? What's up? Or like, you can't even meditate in a park. What's up?
What's up with that? I got a better one. What's up with the fact that there's a high number of black boys being born in Atlanta that does not have an opening to their penis?
Oh, well, you know, hey.
See, we got something more to worry about than just them fools in the streets.
I understand that. That's what I'm saying. This goes back to, again, those particular types of experiments that have been used in one form or another in, like I said, our large and small laboratories that we've been subjected to for as many years as you can think of, that we may knowingly or unknowingly have been a part of. All right? And so as a result or a consequence, this is what's been happening. All right? I mean, with, again, I understand. I'm saying the result of what has been occurring all along, or what's been going all along. You understand? Everything happens in stages, all right? And this is why, again, I go through what I go through, giving you the things that I do to make the connections, all right? That each one of these things, in order to have made their connection, had to have a start or a beginning somewhere in order to, you know what I mean, to be able to make the connections. And it was like a methodical process, all right? So it's not that just suddenly, you know, out of the clear blue this is happening. It's happening because individuals have been tampering with things that they had no business tampering with. I mean, this goes back, again, this is all the planet being out of alignment. And, you know, and just the fact that we're dealing with a bunch of warped individuals any goddamn way.
So I think we need to worry.
No, I think we need to be concerned and act accordingly. All right, because worry produces fear, which eventually produces no fear. No fear! It's not fair! But no, it's not that it's not fair. It means that you don't have any fear to go from this point to the next point. Or a token. Uh-huh.
This question is concerned about order system, civil rights, welfare. Is there any way that those games we think we have made can be just the opposite of what we think they are for?
They are. I mean, I just pretty much explained that by virtue of the fact that they fall under the guidelines or the heading of statutory citizens, you know, regulated by commercial law. Everything that you are involved in, that you enter into in terms of agreements, etc., be it welfare or any of the other ploys, under the guise of civil rights means that you're given a certain amount of privileges which can be taken away or revoked at any time, which indicates this is what's been happening since the original Civil Rights Act of 1866. All right? Then was expanded in 1964 when they came up with the so-called Civil Rights Act. And then everybody was talking about, yes, this is democracy, blah, blah, blah. And the legislative democracy basically meant that you were subjected and regulated under these particular laws. Like I said, by virtue of the fact that, you know, when you sign most things, you have no idea what you're signing because they're unrevealed contracts. You learned all along when you were growing up to read the fine print, but guess what? There is no fine print on those forms that you can see. That's why they're unrevealed, because they're hiding behind colorable law. The colorable law, in this case, are the uniform commercial codes, which, mind you, if you know what they are and how to use them, can be your doorway to get back to common law.
All those things that you just named out, could you define it as like passive aggression on their part?
Of sorts, yes. Very much so.
People are satisfied with that.
Exactly.
They think our soul.
Exactly. That's all. Exactly.
Working on our soul.
There. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Haven't they have, can we define actions of the soul and actions of character?
Yes. We can define that for the most part. That is if one understands what soul is. Soul essentially is no more than why they call you soul people, which is soil, because you're of the earth. All right? Now, your character, of course, deals with something else that can be, you know, whether you're, you know, green, purple, orange, whatever, which goes back to one of the only positive things that I really agree with in terms of what Dr. King was talking about, you know, judge a man by his character or something like that or whatever. Okay, because you have a lot of disagreeable jinns out there who look like you and me, all right? But, you know, but again, like I said, you know, basically, you know, soul is basically what you are. Yes, they've been, like she said, they've been working on our souls or our soil, you know what I mean? Virological experiments, etc., okay? AIDS, Ebola, Streptococcus, Marburg disease, SV40, HBLV, HTLV 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, tropical spastic paraparesis, mycosis fungoid leukemia. I mean, the list goes on. I'm sorry? Yeah, well, I mean, that's, you know, that's based on universal law. I mean, which goes back to the Tai Chi thing, but not to get off into that, but like, if you expending all of this energy, you understand, which that's what everything is about, energy, you know, trying to, whoever you are, you know, I mean, whether it's them, if it were us doing the same thing, the opposite, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, fine, yes, really, you're only canceling yourself out. You know what I mean? So, hey, it is what it is. They know it, they realize it, they don't care. You know what I mean? It's like they feel that, well, I know, I mean, I know what it is. If I do this, this should be the result, or this will be the consequence. But I think I can beat the clock. Remember the game shows used to come on, or whatever, or the principle they're based on, beat the clock? Well, that's what it is. They think they can beat the clock because of their warped sense of time. Going back to the time thing. And what they think time is, to the degree where, like Bobby Hemmett said, they've been messing with it, that they think that they are it. That they're, you know, that they are God. Because, well, I control the time, so therefore I must be God. You know what I mean? But not realizing that, you know, they're still working within the framework of something else that controls them and everything else. Now, until such time that they concede to that fact, oh, well, so what? You're on your own. You know what I mean? Hey. I mean, you know, whatever's clever. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. First of all, melanin. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have jumped ahead. Okay. First of all, melanin, yeah, there are a lot of positive, wonderful things about melanin. Boom, 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 bam, bam, bam. You know them all. You've heard 1,000,005 lectures on it, this, that, and the other. Fine. Now, yes, there are other things about melanin that play a part in what I refer to as a melanic file, which is the substructure of melanin that plays a part and interacts with, again, those particular interactions and subatomic particles, etc., that you are comprised of and a part of, and that melanin, yes, plays a key part in it, or the thing that's responsible for the electromagnetic pulses that ultimately form and create or play a part in the creation of the manifestation of the matter that we know as melanin. However, regarding the pigment, melanin has very little to do with that. It is chromatin. Chromatin plays a part in the pigmentation, which I never elaborated on the last time I came here when someone asked me about the chromatin. Chromatin is no more than a substance that contains what they call eukaryotic chromosomes, all right? And for which those eukaryotic chromosomes basically are organisms containing cells that carry certain genetic materials that determine the growth or development of that organism. Plain and simple, bottom line, all right? Which chrome deals with what? Color, as in monochromatic color, right? So that basically deals with the colorization and also a lot of the genetic information that plays a part in how you develop and ultimately plays a part in, you know, the melanocytes and the melanosomes and the blah, 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 and this, that, and the other, which I'm sure, like I said, you know the whole history on melanin, all right, because you've heard enough people talk about it. So apart from that, like I said, until such time that whatever stage or level you're at in terms of melanin evolvement or melanin development, all right, until such time we begin understanding the internal and how it works, all right, now you have a greater potential of certain things because of the fact that you have the melanin and all of the other things, what have you, but that applies to everybody, that they have the potential to, you know, evolve to those higher levels, whether they're orange, purple, blue, lavender, whatever, okay? And so that is, you know, what it is, you know what I mean? It's like, hey, you know, I mean, I don't know what else to say about that, you know what I mean? I mean, I can get into a dissertation and a dialogue and a lecture on melanin alone, but, you know, it's like, we beyond that, you know what I mean? It's about the other thing we've been talking about all night. Yeah. When we do that? Oh, well, basically it's much like, you know, dealing with the language when they use the words and the blah, 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 this, that, and the other, is that, you know, you are subjecting yourself to and locking yourself into the warlock's time, whoever that warlock might be. A time of war, right? Locking you into a time which lock is no more than a clock, right? Click, clock, tick, tock. You know what I mean? So they took, you know, the what is it, the tock out of the tick, or the tick-tock, and now it says tick, 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 like a bomb, right? Right? Okay, good. So anyway, yeah, you know, so that's basically what you do, you know what I mean? It's like Bobby was saying, you know, it's like, you know, if you go to work and this, that, and the other, yeah, I understand you got to be a little conscientious of, you know, the time. But outside of that, I mean, don't be walking around, well, I got to have my watch, yo, oh, just got a new Rolex, yo, you know what I mean? It ain't about that. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's like, hey, you know what I mean? And, yo, I'm sorry, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The components of it and how it does assist one on the internal circulation, if any, of chi and it. You elaborate on that as far as, you know, I've heard some things that said that, you know, because of the makeup, the chemical makeup of melanin, the types of elements that it was made of, it was kind of like a superconductor of sorts.
Yeah, it is, and it plays a part in the electromagnetic charges and exchanges and this, that, and the other, as with every and anything else in your body, all right? And yes, learning the importance of it, and more importantly, how to see it, how to visualize it, and how to control it and command it, all right, as in the 10 Commandments. You know what I mean? Word commands. Okay? So at whatever stage and to whatever degree it is that you have the melanin, neuromelanin, etc., okay, which actually is a step below where we've been the whole day. You know what I mean? But in regards to your question and all of that, but basically it's about, like I said, to whatever degree that you have it, which everyone has it, it is understanding it and going through the various steps and things like that to be able to visualize it and move it. All right. See, the whole idea of the chi and cultivating the chi, getting back to what somebody in one of two of three people may have asked, is to ultimately condition yourself and to get a sense of what is happening internally to be able to get to the other stages of development. All right. When going back to the subatomic particles and all of that, blah blah blah. You know what I mean? So when you begin to see things in their steps, all right, and how they work, you pretty much, it's just like the chakras, what they call the chakras, which are interwoven, right? Once you understand how they work and what's happening, oh yeah, okay, that's happening there, yeah, okay. Boom, boom, boom. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. I mean, that's all it is. You know what I mean? Once you understand it. Now, because that may be a key factor or key component that plays a part in a lot of that, some people might have to work harder, which is no different than people, period, that are on different levels of evolvement once they come here. You understand what I'm saying? Which is why you gravitate to certain things before others, which gets back to what she was saying earlier, and how can we help the people out there, and you know what I mean? And when I went back to the DNA explosions and, how it happened for him at this time, it could be the next guy tomorrow, and the next guy tomorrow, chain reaction, whatever. Oh, yeah, that plays a significant part in many things. I mean, which is why they use key colors, like, what's this, ABC TV, they got the thing, sit home, you got so many brain cells, why aren't you watching TV now? And they got the little black letters with the yellow background, saying how that affects certain things within you subliminally. I mean, so, color, yes, it's very significant. You know what I mean? Positively and negatively, depending on how you use it and who's using it and for what. You know what I mean? So yeah, it does play a large part in it, which goes back to actually, analogically speaking, deals with what we talked about with the quarks. All right? We know that electrons and protons basically have equal and opposite charges, but the quarks also have what they call fractions of those charges. You know what I mean? Which go up, down, charmed, what they call, charmed and something else, and then top, bottom, all right, which are, analogically speaking, relate to colors. You know what I mean? So colors are everywhere. You know what I mean? Quarks, anti-quarks, whatever. They play a part in the, like I said, the what they call quantum chromodynamics, as well as electromagnetic, electromagnetic dynamics, quantum chromodynamics. Uh-huh. Yeah. You raised your hand.
Oh, yeah, I thought so. I've heard a lot of different stuff. Can you kind of put it all together and back to kind of summarizing that?
I mean, short of, in other words, repeat what I said.
Yeah. Kind of.
Okay. Well, basically, like I said, and as I've used about as many examples as one can use, at least so I feel, that basically it gets back to understanding, bottom line, the internal, before you can deal with the external. You know what I mean? And most of us have been stuck in one place dealing with, and many of us, conscientiously speaking, want to have change and bring about change and, uplift the race or trace and bring about changes on a whole, but they're just frustrated because they don't know, well, how do I beat this beast? You know what I mean? It seems like no matter what I do, I can't beat it, right? So basically, in order to do that, and the only way to do that, all right, is basically dealing with all of the things we talked about, which goes and deals with the internal, all right? Now, once you're dealing with the internal, okay, then you're dealing with the external, okay? Because you're going from the inward to the outward, all right? And without going through everything step by step again, is basically understanding the, like I said, the path, the chain of events that occur within the body that play a part within what actually and ultimately happens outside. You understand? Because that's the only way, and until such time that we do that, can we change what's happening externally. You understand? So that's all I can really say, you know, in relation and conclusion to that. All right? And not without me just saying, oh, well, you got to deal with the internal. Well, shit, well, damn, how do I start? Where do I begin? Which is why I went through all of what I went through. See?
Breaking it down so you can see anatomically in your physical body what is happening. Now's the time with the energy that are hitting the planet to which now these processes where it took like so-called Jesus 18 years
Exactly.
to raise himself up.
Exactly.
You can get where it took me 3 years, you can get it in a month.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, see, the thing is that individuals, by and large, and that's a very good point, because individuals, by and large, which goes back to what we were saying earlier and how people are, they're lazy because, again, they're dealing with what you said, being satisfied to the degree where, okay, now if you turn them on to this and tell them about this, shit, yo, man, how can I get that tomorrow? You know what I mean? Can you hit me off with that? You know what I mean? So I can, like, shapeshift? You know what I mean? I just want to, you know, like, yo, I just want to be, like, shapeshift, you know, and not understanding the true science behind it. You understand? And that there's a certain responsibility that comes with it. You know what I mean? So in other words, now if you explain it to them like that, you know, well, this is, you know, there's a rule, boom, 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 boom. Yo, I ain't hearing all of that. Yo, just give me a 9, you know what I'm saying? And I'm straight. So what I'm saying is that people are looking for quick fixes. You understand? And they're not willing to take the time to do what you're doing. And like this brother and this sister and this brother and that, what, you know, diligently, like, you know, researching and this, that, and the other. And the whole point of that is to have these references to be able to put them together and then be able to internalize them and then externalize them. All right? From the outward to the inward, from the inward to the outward, and the inward to the inward. The outward to the inward to the outward, and the inward to the inward. Brother be dropping it. Yeah, exactly.
They stop at the airports everywhere.
Exactly.
I ain't got no tag on my car.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm saying, you know, when you do the stuff and you're serious about it, and you're really dedicated and serious and you know when the brother's telling you, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's exactly. It's no coincidence. Not to cut you. I'm sorry. It's no coincidence that you've heard people say time and time again, whether they really understood what they were saying or not, that you control everything. You control it, whether you are completely, totally conscious and aware of it or not. You control it. You control it, you control it, you control it. And until such time that, you know, each one of us realize that, yo, it's just, you know what I'm saying? It's just. It's like that, you know? It's real. It's on and popping. You know? It's like that. But, yeah, were there any other, you know, questions, comments, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Briefly, you mentioned following the yellow brick road,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to assume that you understood what that meant. Would you explain to us a little bit about Cinderella and the yellow brick road and the cosmic field? How does that relate to
Oh, yo, very simple. Very simple. You were told and given instructions, much like Nautica, notice time, We're telling you what's happening, what's going on. Now you need to be aware of what's happening, right? Now, follow the yellow brick road. The yellow brick road is a simple path. However, just like we were talking about the devil earlier, and somebody mentioned that, you mentioned yesterday, that he's not allowed to touch you, but he can create as much confusion and chaos as possible, that if you are stupid enough or dumb enough to veer off, then hey, you know what I mean? Then that's all the much more harder, if you will, or more harder, whatever it is, that you have to work to get back to it. You understand? Which means that you got to go back through that obstacle that was set there or placed in front of you when you were initially on the road to begin with, when you were born and came here. Exactly. Which, all right. Okay. Which, of course, again, takes us into, I got 5 minutes left, which, of course, takes us into the poppy field. Again, is it... I'm trying to get to that. I'm trying to answer your question, and that is no more than bam, hallucinogenics, drugs, bam, sleep, coma, comma, right? As in community, as an urban community, an herb, right? Somnific effect, bam, you out. You know what I mean? So that's basically what it is. And bam, that it affects you more so than it does others, which goes back to the melanin, because of the serotonin levels. Why? Because within serotonin you have what? Indole rings. And those indole rings, right, are basically comprised of what they call nitrogen, right? Nitrogen atoms and carbon, right? You have 8 carbon and 1 nitrogen, right? And those same indole rings are found in most of your hallucinogens or hallucinogenic, plants, etc.
Okay, being that, melatonin also induces lucid states, would it be correct to think that they also have indole rings, melatonin itself?
They do, but they not as significantly, because this deals more so with the psychokinetic functions, all right? Like you may have watched, and I gotta keep going back to Star Trek Voyager, I'm sorry, I'm a fan. When Tess, the girl Tess, who, the beginning of the season, something happened to her when they came in contact with species 8472, all right? And even the Borg could not defeat these people, all right? Because the Borg go around assimilating. You will be assimilated. Virus. They're a virus, a disease, right? So anyway, but Kess somehow or another, after they went through all of that, and then they took 7 of 9 on the ship, what happened was that, what's-her-face, Kess, something happened where she was, she was an empath of sorts, right? And had some kind of kinetic ability to begin with. However, it had heightened her ability. And when the doctor examined her, he said, your serotonin levels are up. I don't understand it, you know what I mean? That, you have all of this psychic kinetic stuff happening, right? And then Tuvok took her into the room, and said, well, I'm going to take you through a series of meditations so we can better understand this, right? They're sitting down, he says, look into the flame. What do you see? Homegirl was like, well, I see subatomic particles, and he was like, what do you mean you see subatomic? And then she says, well, actually, I see something beyond it. He says, something beyond that? There's nothing beyond subatomic particles. She says, yes, there is. You know what I mean? So, yo, you know what I mean? Shit is all, it's deep. It's deep, but, yeah, but anyway, that goes back to the whole, poppy seed, hallucinogenic, this, that, and the other, and the alkaloids, boom, boom, boom. Hello, you know what I'm saying? Can I have a number for Al, last name Kaholic? You know what I mean? So, basically, that's what they see us as. You know what I mean? Which goes back to the, Native Americans. It goes back to our whole thing, why we can't drink. We can't hold our liquor, right? Because, bam, it goes right there. So, anyway, in closing, because, my time is up, but, thank you for having me. It's been fierce. It's been all that, and I look forward to coming back in the future, and thank you.